When I was a kid, I had my parents send me to summer camp every year for 1 full month because they loved me. Also because I had ADD, probably. And every year, this was before email, before social media, before smartphones, like back when Pluto was a planet. Every single year, I would go to all of my friends and I would gather up all their addresses and I'd make these big promises. I'm going to write you every day. 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 And every single one of my 15 friends, I had all these plans to share all the experiences I would have because I needed to know in middle school what was happening at home. You have no idea what can happen 1 month in the life of a middle schooler. I don't know if you heard what Susie said to Tommy about Jeff. It doesn't matter. We're not friends with Tommy anymore. That's the point. See, but something weird happened every single time I would go to camp. I'd start to get busy, and I would end up writing 2 letters once a week. And the reason is because there were these obstacles that kept me from doing it. Like, I would always make sure to write my parents. If they were going to send me to camp and let me kayak and canoe and horseback ride and hike, you better believe I was going to tell them about all the important life lessons I was learning. And then I would write the girl I had a crush on. But everyone else would be left for later. Because when we have obstacles, we end up focusing on the things that are most important to us and communicating to the people and the things that we care the most about. But something has happened in the world that we live in. And that's that it's never been easier to send messages to whoever, whenever, wherever, for whatever reason. And when we have no obstacles, we sometimes don't always make the best decisions. When we look at it in a broader sense globally, over the last 2 years, 90% of data that has ever been created was created in the last 2 years. You see it personally. Go on Facebook. I used to not care about anybody but a very small number of people that I really deeply cared about. And now I know about what the guy who was in my freshman English class had for lunch yesterday. And he's got like 10 likes for it. But here's the question I have. In a world where everyone is speaking, who's listening? Because something interesting has happened as this information access has grown. It's almost like we have a classroom full of me. If the whole world is a classroom, everyone has my personality. And when I was a kid, these were the 2 things that every report card said. Talks a lot, struggles to pay attention. To which I would always say, you can't blame me if you're a boring teacher. So what does that mean for us? Here's what it means. It has never been more important the way that we structure messages and the way that we deliver them. In a world where information is free, in a world where everyone gets to have their voice heard, the way that we choose to say something will determine whether anyone listens. And I've got bad news. And this is going to hurt me more than it's going to hurt you. Most of you are not very good at it. Now, don't worry. This isn't your fault. We live in an interesting time when it comes to the way that we're taught about communication and messaging and presentations. For centuries, the study of rhetoric, which is what this is, was an essential part of the education system. In fact, Aristotle, who created what we call classical education, put it as one of the 3 first units of education. Along with grammar and logic, we had rhetoric. He said the duty and office of rhetoric is to use all given means of persuasion in a given instance. See, they understood historically this was absolutely critical to our success and to the success of society. But something happened about the time of Enlightenment, and this idea came up that information could stand on its own, and it didn't matter how we were presenting it or who was presenting it. Unfortunately, what we found is what that means is that those who learn it have a significant increase in power from the rest of us. But with everything that's bad news about this, there's also good news. And the good news is these are skills that we can actually learn. A lot of us have been taught when it comes to communication that it's something that we're either born with or we're not. And some of us even say, in fact, I was working with someone just a couple weeks ago, and they said, well, I don't think I can do that because that just wouldn't be me. And we have this idea that the way we communicate is core to our identity. There's a lot of things wrong with this. Most of all, that the way we communicate is a behavior that changes over time. It is not our identity. So we can change, we can grow, we can shift the way we structure what we say, we can shift the way we deliver what we say, but we just have to make the decisions to actually do it. So in the short time I have with you, I want to just give you 3 pieces of information that are really helpful when it comes to thinking about how we do this. And I'm going to focus more on the presentation aspect here just because of the amount of time we have and the venue that we're in. And these are the 3 questions that any audience is always asking about you when you stand up to speak. Most of us don't realize we're asking it, but it's very important to the way we determine what we're receiving. Because if we don't receive or we don't like the speaker, if we don't answer these questions well as the speaker, hey, we're always 2 seconds away from that smartphone, right? So here are the 3 questions that the audience is asking of the speaker. Number 1, the most important question: why should I care? Why should I care? Another way to put this is that it's the speaker's responsibility to emotionally engage the audience. We have to answer this question. Another way I like to think of it is that whenever I stand up to speak, my speech is all about the audience. We have this tendency when we get up on stage to just think all about us. We're nervous. This is something core to what I want to share with you, and we focus all on us. All the while, we never make the connection to even give any incentive for the audience to actually understand why they should be listening. An easy way and a practical tip to think about whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing in this regard is to ask the question, how often do you say the word you versus how often do you say the word I? Don't get me wrong, people want to hear your story. When you stand up to speak, people want to hear about your life, but they also need to understand how it fits their life and how it connects to them. So we always want to make an emotional connection. There's a couple other things that I think about when I think about making an emotional connection. And one way that we consider it is that we make sure that we expose a need. We reveal a problem. When somebody feels internally that something in their life is wrong, that there's something that needs to change, that there's a deficit, we will engage. Another way to put it is that we want to create a comparison between how things are versus how things could be. And that comparison creates emotional engagement. So we have to answer the first question: why should I care? Second question and third question, I'm going to push these together. There was a study done out of Princeton where researchers gave students 2 photos, and they were photos of political candidates running for office against one another. These were in areas where the students didn't know either candidate. Something interesting happened. They were able to reliably predict, just based on a photo, who was going to win that election. What the researchers ended up finding is that candidates that displayed 2 particular behaviors were the ones that were winning. Number 1, trust. Number 2, dominance, power, confidence, strength. And so when we think about the audience, the way that we say that is that we always have to answer the question of, do I trust you? Are you a friend or are you a foe? In fact, in our brains, the amygdala, it's a part of our brain that there's always this toward or away feeling for people, and we get that impression immediately. This is wired into our survival. Because if we can't tell pretty early on whether we can trust you or whether we should run from you, this thing could end badly for us. So we have to answer, do I trust you? And then the last one is we have to answer, do I respect you? Are you an expert? Do you know what you're talking about? The easiest way that we determine that is, how does the speaker reveal what they feel about themselves? Do I stand up here and pull my hands in like this? Do I have my shoulders slouched and looking away from you? Those are displays that say I'm trying to do whatever I can to get away, and that says I am not confident, I am not strong. And the audience responds by saying, I don't know if I respect you. Or what they really say is, I'm just kind of bored. We don't always get the right vibe in terms of why we want to drift off and lose our attention. The question becomes, how do we actually do this, right? In the words of Hamlet, we want to suit the action to the word and the word to the action. This just means we want to align the channels of communication so our verbals, what we say, the words that we use, and our nonverbals. And that's everything from our facial expressions and eye contact to our voice, which means volume, pitch, pace, to the way that we stand, our posture, our gestures, what we do with these hands, and finally, how we plant our feet. All of these little indicators say something about how we feel about the words that we're saying. For so many of us, what happens is we have these ideas we're passionate about. We have this story that we want to share, but we walk up on stage and we shut down. Anxiety comes in, and we pull back, or we get aggressive with that. And we want to fight, and we start getting angry, and we yell. And all the while, we miss the chance because we're not suiting the action to the word. And there's this misalignment, and it's out of that misalignment that audiences don't trust and don't respect a speaker. I will say this, that particularly for guys, I find that many guys, we've been taught this John Wayne, Mr. Miyagi mentality towards emotion. I just want to act as straight and resolute. Nothing affects me. So we walk up on stage and we say, I'm really passionate about the topic that I'm going to give you guys today. Today we're going to talk about kittens and babies. It's interesting because I video people when we work with them, and I get the chance to work with some fun people and exciting people who have amazing stories. And often, people think that they're being far more expansive in their gestures and in their emotions than they really are. So the easiest way I could say that we want to align the verbal and the nonverbal is we want to expand our emotional range. Expand it. People want to see us excited. In fact, the way that we determine how we're feeling at that moment, in large part, is we mimic internally the emotions we see other people reveal. So we have this desire to protect and to not show a lot of emotion. All the while, the audience just wants to know what you feel. And we do that through 100 little things. When I pull back a little bit and I think about these 3 questions and the general topic, you know, I'm really saddened in a lot of ways by the state of rhetoric in our society. So many of us have been taught so many ideas that limit our potential. And what I want to say is that this has never been more important to work on, to become a student of, than it is today. In a world where messages are shooting out in 100 different directions, we're finding that our entire culture is becoming suckers of irrelevancy, where the messages that are broadcast at the highest level are the things that matter least, or even worse, they're absolutely damaging. And so for those people who are pursuing excellence, who have a story to share, it has never been more important, it has never been more critical for us to stand and to learn how to literally put our feet correctly, to use our voice well, to show our facial expressions, because it's the only way that we will have any shot of changing culture and impacting people in a positive way. And so I stand here and I beg you, don't believe the lie that great speaking is for a few people that just happen to be born with it. That great communication is reserved for those people who just happen to fall into it. No, it's a skill. For centuries, people understood it was a skill that was developed. Behavior, not identity. Skill, not birthright. But the choice on whether you want to invest the time and effort to have your voice heard because you have a story that matters is yours and yours alone. And so that's where I'm going to leave it with. Thank you.